All right, welcome back, my friends. Today we are going to be reloading some 223 Remington with some cast bullets here. This is the Lee 225-55, and with my alloy they come out at around 52 grains. Some are as light as 51.5, some up to 52.5. I'm not going to sort them, but there's a little variance there because they're cast. Anyways, we're going to be using some Federal number 205 small rifle primers. That's just their standard rifle primer. They're not magnums, they're not super hard or anything like that, but we're just using a bolt gun, so we shouldn't have to worry about any slam fires or any of that nonsense. Moving on, we're going to be using Hodgdon Titewad here. This is the fastest burning powder that I have, and it should work pretty well for some reduced or cast loads. If you've never seen Titewad, it is a very fine flattened flake powder, and it is number 5 on Hodgdon's burn rate chart, so it is very, very fast burning, and we're not going to be using a whole lot for our charges. So stick with me and we'll get into a ladder test real quick here. And the purpose of our ladder test, it's similar to your Satterley method where you're looking for a velocity node, but here I'm just looking for where I'm going to start to see pressure, because this is a super fast burning powder. I don't want to start at like 10 grains and think I'm okay, so I'm going to start fairly low and do a ladder up in half grain increments while going through the chronograph and measuring velocity at the same time, noting different pressures and stuff like that on the brass, if the bolt lift is any harder, if our primers are flat. We're going to go over that and see if there's anything we can learn. So I've already actually done our little Satterley / ladder / pressure check test here, and I started at 4.5 grains and went up to 8 grains, and we started as low as 1661 and steadily climbed up. There were no nodes, there was nothing like that, and I stopped at 8 grains. That's all I actually tested, and we ended up at 2249. And if we remember back to shooting these bullets with IMR 4227, that's right around the velocity of our 13 grain charge with that, which we had pretty decent accuracy with. So I think we're going to go ahead and check out what kind of group we can do with this 8 grain charge. And I just got some gas checks, Sage's Outdoors 22 caliber aluminum gas checks. I've never used these before, so I was going to try that for this test. I was going to shoot the same charge weight of 8 grains, 10 shots with gas checks, 10 shots without them. So that was my plan. I was getting to loading them. I had to first seat our gas checks onto some of the bullets that have already been sized. But I had some problems because the powder coating on the shank of the bullet has already increased that little diameter too much for my gas checks to fit on. So the 10 that I sent through actually kind of stuck onto the bullets, but you can see the base of them. They just formed a cup on the ramrod from the sizing die while I tried to seat the gas check. So I don't think that's what we were going for, so I actually pulled them off. They weren't on there really good anyways. And since I've already done this test, I don't have the bullets to show you, but the ones we tried to seat them on, this shank had another ring around it with an even smaller diameter where the gas checks had sort of been crimped on, and they sort of deformed a little bit of the base around that edge on the shank where the gas check was supposed to have been seated. So yeah, now the test has changed to failed gas check versus plain base, and I ran the first 5 shots of each group over the chronograph. So our first 5 shots were these pieces of brass with a dot on the primer. That was indicating that they did have gas checks applied to them, but then they came off, so now they're the gas checkless. We had an average velocity, 2239, extreme spread of 33, standard deviation of 12 there. And then I went to the second group here with a circle around them. Those were just the plain base, 2234 for your average, extreme spread of 14, and standard deviation of 5. Wow, that's pretty good, right? But also note the very first shot of the day, that velocity was 1957, and we only had 4 shots of data collected with this first group. I pulled out that one that was 1957 because it was cold bore, and you know, first one of the day, your barrel's gonna warm up, and everything else fell right into that range there. So I omitted this piece of data and also noted that it was the lowest shot on the target, which we will see here right now. So here was our first 5 shots with the dot on the primers. This was the first shot at 1957. It went way low, and other than that one, they're all here right in about an inch at 50 yards. So here's our second group here with the circle on the primers. We've got 2 touching, and the rest of them are all about in an inch as well. So there were the first 5 shots for each target. After that, I went to do the next 5 of each. We moved the chronograph out of the way so I wasn't, dodging that. And then our very next shot on the top target, number 6, went to the far right. Whoopsie, I don't know if that was because our barrel was cold again. I wasn't measuring velocity, so we couldn't compare that. And then we had another mistake. I had taper crimped these and I went down a little too hard, and my 7th shot, or maybe the eighth shot got stuck in the chamber when I tried to extract it, so I had to get out the cleaning rod and bump it out through the other end there.
Take care.
So here's our last 5 shots. This is number 6, and then the last 5 were right back in here. So yeah, aside from shot number 1 with the cold barrel and shot number 6, it looks like we're right inside of an inch here at 50 yards with this 8 grain charge of Titewad. So here's our top target after the final 5 shots to make it a 10-shot group. This was the first one that went way low. Its velocity was 1957. It was the first shot of the day with the cold bore. Everything after that warmed right up. But when we came back, shot number 6 was right over here. So I don't know if that was due to cold bore or whatnot, and who now. But these were also the ones with the deformed vases from the failed gas checking. So it could have been something along those lines as well. So with these 2 flyers in the group, which we have to count because they're obviously on the paper, we're looking at 1.8 inches here. Yeah, 1.8 inches, but if we omit the 2 flyers, possibly due to cold bore, we are at 1.2 inches here. And again, at 50 yards, that's about 2.5 MOA. Not spectacular, but we cannot omit these because they're on the paper. I shot them, see? So we're up to 1.8 inches. Anyways, that was our top target with the deformed bases. All right, so after that, we've got our final 5 shots without the gas checks on our bottom target. So let's roll the footage. Alrighty, last 5 shots with the circles on the primers. These were not gas checked. These are just getting stacked right in there without the gas checks. That one might have gone a little bit low. Last one, let's see if we can keep him in that little cluster. All right, not bad. Let's go check it out. Here we've got our last 5 shots on the target without gas checks. This is the one I called low. I don't know if I pulled it or if that was just the load, but here were the other 9 shots. Just maybe, I would give it 2 inches, but if we give that one a shot as well, we're well over 2 inches, and you know, we can't not count it because it's obviously on the target, but not too bad right here with this little cluster. But let's get back inside and do some measurements and rabble on a little bit longer here. And here we are with our 10 shots from our second group without the gas checks. Shot number 7, I called it low. That's this one here, but again, we can't omit that from the group. Even if I said it was crappy, it's because I did it. So here we are at about 2.5 inches with 10 shots. Remove that one, and we're still at 1.6 inches. Ew, gross. So not the best group there, not the best accuracy. It is seeming to be mostly vertical stringing, although we had an SD of, what was it, 12 or something. Very interesting. It might just not be a great load with that powder because I've never heard of anyone using Titewad for cast rounds. But now that we know that this one is sort of a pretty meh, like it'll get the job done if I'm within 50 yards, but I don't want to stretch out after that. And at 100, my groups are, you know, 8 to 10 inches. That's ugly. That's just not great. You know, we can do better than that. But I was just starting with the fastest burning powder I have and seeing where we saw pressure and seeing what velocity range we could achieve. And if we remember, we were right at 2240-ish. That's where this powder charged with IMR 4227 seemed to have been doing pretty well. So yeah, this is about 1.1, 1.15 for this group here going 2200. So I was just trying to do that with a different powder. But maybe if we can get down to 2200 instead of the 2250 we were doing, it might tighten up. I don't know. So anyways, I'm gonna have to cast some more bullets before I can actually test the gas checks, because with the powder coat I have on them, they're too fat to fit on properly to get seated properly while being sized through the die. So I have to cast more up before we're able to test gas check versus plain base. So this ended up just being a test of the exact same bullet, except one version was screwed up with the bases kind of deformed. But if we overlay them, they sort of have a very similar point of impact, sort of similar diagonal grouping there. This one's moving along this way right here with a couple flyers. And this one's moving along this way right here as well with a couple high and low outside of that little cluster. So I don't think the 2 things I was testing today really showed us anything other than this group is not great with this powder. So on to the next one. We're going to keep using the powders that I have on hand, moving from fastest burning to slowest burning until we find some really awesome powders for this bullet here. And I think that's gonna do it for today, I suppose. I guess the next one we'll do is get a couple other powders and do our ladder test to check for pressures again. So I'll do maybe 2 different powders with that, find out where our pressure begins, back away from there because pressure is bad. We'll try and shoot some groups, we'll get some chronograph data, and I'm gonna have to cast some of these up pretty darn soon, so we will be testing with gas checks as well. And no, this is not going to work in your AR. It's only for bolt guns. Unless you have a side charger or you want to manually cycle them, your AR-15 is not going to work with probably 90% of these powders until I get to the way slower end. So until then, I'm just kind of making it up. That's why we do the pressure test. So anyways, if you enjoy this sort of content, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Stay tuned for more because we will see you in the next video. Have a good one.